Hello my friends and welcome to the Toledo AAR. This episode, I think, is going to be a really important one if you want to be a better player, right? You don't get good at strategy games by simply playing them, or simply practicing, or simply reading about strategies and strategy guides and all that kind of thing. The real way that you gain the tools you need to win in any situation is to analyze when it went wrong and break that analysis down into what went well, what went exactly as planned, what was acceptable, like that you would do again because you're under pressure to do it. And, really identifying what went wrong in particular. And that includes things that were in your control and out of your control. So, originally in Toledo, I had this set up like this, plus my aircraft, which I have undeployed. You can see here. Amusingly, you can actually deploy aircraft here. I'm not really sure how wise that is. But it's interesting that that's an option. I just didn't notice it the last time. Okay, so I had a very general setup here. It was this is a general kind of layout of units that would allow me to deal with any threat. And when I originally looked at the map, I said to myself, okay. So the mission briefing said that what I have to do is I have to take my units, sweep across here, killing everything in my path, getting here fast enough to stop enemy infantry that's going to reinforce down here, and thus relieve this city. Now, you could break down this into three fronts. I had this front, which pushed across here and cleaned this whole area. And that went pretty much exactly as planned. Now, could it have gone better? Could I have done more? Could it have been more perfect? Of course. Of course it could. Now that we've played the mission and we know what's out there, of course we can tailor it to be better. But the bottom line is that, in a general strategy case, like say you were playing another player, you would never be able to tailor your army to beat theirs because you don't know what they've got or what they're going to do or anything, and unless the other player is horrendously predictable. So this was fine, and I should just leave it alone. Now my reasoning for the middle lane was, so obviously I can bring my artillery to push down here and support the middle lane. That was another thing covered in the mission briefing. So what I did was I peeled off two of my artillery, well, almost all of it actually in the end. My artillery ended up pushing down this way. One of them ended up going this way for support. But the other two peeled down here to occupy these positions. And what I did was I bought a couple of auxiliary infantry, which I deployed up here. Although I do note that you can actually deploy these down here and here. This is something I didn't actually notice. I was looking at these two deployment zones and never thought to look down here. You can actually deploy your own infantry down here. But anyway, what I did do was I deployed them here. I actually think I deployed both of them here and my artillery here. And I figured that with a couple of extra infantry that you're not supposed to have, they would provide the extra support I require to actually push down here and win the battle. And that would not be a problem in any way. And this was okay. This worked out pretty much as planned, but the main issue was that the enemy had some really nasty fighters, which I just couldn't kill. I just couldn't bring them down fast enough So they were harassing me throughout the whole campaign. So looking at this middle area, I wouldn't say that I would change much, except that I need greater capability to get that fighter harassment off my case. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at what units didn't perform very well. Well, the artillery actually didn't perform that well because it didn't really change the situation much. In fact, I would potentially say that this would be a great place to deploy the 21cm, because the 21cm counter batteries artillery, and there is a lot of enemy artillery around, which means that when it fires, the 21cm would counter battery it, doing massive damage. So there's actually potential to bring the 21cm here and delete a lot of these artillery on this hill here with its 4 range. Does it have 4 range as standard, or does it have yeah, I think it has 4 range as standard. 4 range as standard, 5 on the hill. So, you know, it could easily hit this. It could actually pretty much siege the whole city. But the other thing was that, you know, that fighter harassment really put the pain on us. This anti-tank gun just did not, and to be honest, I've only been including it in my army to get EXP on it. This did not perform. It didn't do anything for us at all. The enemy was mostly infantry and scout cars, and the scout cars really avoided engaging it. So I'm going to file this one away. Let's undeploy it. And let's file it away. So now the question is, if I deploy the 21cm, so I've got two thoughts. Well, I can't afford them both. I can either include more an AA to deal with the fighter threat, the fighter threat that was harassing us the whole time. We can include more AA to deal with that. Or I could bring the 21cm along. Now, the thing is, I said before about, you know, not specializing because you don't know what the enemy has. But actually, if we'd really analyzed this, it was kind of obvious from what we see here that the 21cm would actually be very useful. Because there is so much enemy artillery in highly defensible, entrenched places that it makes it obvious that what you want to bring is something that is incredibly effective against artillery, which is what the 21cm is. More than anything, an anti-artillery artillery. So what we're going to do is we are going to try and hit both of those problems. But we're going to need slots for it. More than just the one slot I gained for putting away my anti-tank gun that wasn't that useful. So what we will do is, we will put one artillery away, of course. File it away, undeploy. Reserve. Okay. So the question is, how important is it for me to have 3 10cm guns? Probably not that important. And in fact, one thing that I did do was I actually deployed a 112 because it's, you know, superior. But it ended up taking a lot of damage because of the air harassment. The air harassment was a big deal. So we'll still do that. So let's undeploy this one as well. Alright, so I'm still going to buy the 122 with a wagon. Not as an auxiliary though. Ooh, that was a mistake, nearly. In fact, we'll move that one forward. Ooh. Okay. So we have to take care of the air issue before we think about the 21cm gun anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to deploy another 2cm. Because the 2cm is very effective against fighters thanks to its rapid fire and access to low altitude. I don't believe that this guy gets access to low altitude. No, he doesn't. So this is the tool that we want, which is replacing our anti-tank gun that really wasn't effective. And also we know that we can overstrength this for free, which is nice. Okay, so we've made one change, which is to change our anti-tank to an anti-air, because we really didn't need anti-tank, and we really did need anti-air. Now, the next thing is, so I've got 3 slots left, because I undeployed 1 artillery, thinking about replacing it with a 21cm. Is there easy access to 3 additional slots that I could get easy access to deploy that 21cm? Or do I just accept that what happened last time on this front was okay? And to be honest, you really could accept that what happened on this front was okay. I could just redeploy the 10.5cm, redo exactly what I did last time, and you know, we know that that results in an okay victory on this front. And we get a strong victory on this front, an okay victory on this front. And where it fell apart was on this front. So, you know, on thinking about the problem, you do have to think about, am I over-investing in trying to fix an issue that was only medium priority when there was a huge problem here? This was the front that didn't work. So, before we decide as to whether we want to add anything more to this front, we need to look at the bad front. So what went wrong here was, here we were fine. My tank and recon moved in to support this infantry, and it did a fine job, and it ended up pushing up, and there was no problem. This front just fell to pieces. Because this infantry groups just made many boneheaded decisions that got them surrounded and killed. These guys ended up going up here, which is fine. It meant that they won this front even harder. But honestly, I think the expectation was for them to run across here and fight these guys, which is not what happened. So, what wasn't... So what can I do down here? The only thing that I can do down here is deploy auxiliaries. I cannot deploy my own units down here. If I take a unit such as this anti-tank gun just for demonstration purposes and try and deploy it. Oh, I can deploy down here, yeah. So I could deploy down here, but this is all hills and stuff. So that's one. This is a big issue, is that this is all hills, which means that vehicles are gonna suffer tremendously down here. Constantly harassing these guys with air worked well. It worked extremely well, but I only started doing it from the third or so turn. I didn't start doing it immediately. So my thought is, these strat bombers did not really achieve much for me either. They just ended up getting shot a lot by the enemy fighters and really doing some light suppression. So, because we want to win the mission, of course we want to win the mission, why don't we deploy... so I'm going to deploy some bridge engineers up here because I actually used those last time to bridge here and here, which I forgot about. So let me just Oh, that's weird. Once you've deployed the auxiliaries, the undeploy button seems to go missing. Can I just delete them and get my prestige back? Nope. Wow, that's an annoying bug. Okay, well, there goes some prestige for no reason. Okay, so what I could do is I could just pad down here. So I can deploy these guys, obviously. No problem there. And what I can do is I can also bring these guys, who will not be in any way combat effective, but just stick them in the airport to secure it. And now I could use this airport safely to support these guys, which I think will be enough. Right, so the strat bombers we took out because we didn't feel like they were doing anything for us. So over what we deployed last time, what we're missing is one artillery, which we potentially wanted to make a 21 centimeter, which will take us up to 39 slots. And we haven't deployed our air wings yet. As it stood, I put my strategic bombers away because I didn't feel like they were really achieving anything for me. And honestly, the scout plane didn't really achieve much for me either. So now the question is, what would be more beneficial to me? Would it be more beneficial to deploy that 21 centimeter to help me shift this artillery? Or would it be more beneficial to me to deploy more aircraft and more vicious aircraft? And the answer to that is, I actually think that it's probably better, even though there's a real opportunity here for the 21 centimeter gun, because of the air harassment that really made me struggle here, and because of the need for air support to take down what's going on here, it actually makes sense to really strengthen my air force. And you can only really do that analysis until after you've looked at the whole situation of all three fronts and what you're left with after you've removed the elements that weren't that great or weren't that useful. So, on reflection, we'll redeploy the 10 centimeter because that was fine. This went okay and we want it to go okay again. And what we're going to focus on is winning this front down here and this front here that struggled before. Oh, one thing that I can do as well is I can use these guys, so nice and cheap. I'm deploying much more auxiliary this time to defend these airports so that I can deploy to them safely. Okay, so this leaves me with 4 core slots. So we had 2 issues. One was trying to do as much damage to these as possible, and we did do reasonable damage to them every turn. And the other one was having enough fighters to actually counter the enemy fighters. So my thought is that what we want is an additional fighter, or we want to strengthen our fighters so that they're more deadly. And we may want to also over-strengthen our anti-ground. Now, one thing that we did note was that our fighters actually got pretty solid damage on the enemy infantry. They have a soft attack of 3. And I believe the biplane has a soft attack of 7, and the Junker, it's 9, I think? 8. But nevertheless, the fighters were getting 2 kills, whereas the strats were getting 3 to 4. So the thought is In order to reduce casualties and increase effectiveness against the enemy fighters that were driving us crazy, we should probably overstrengthen all of these. Or at least 2 of them. Or take on an additional fighter and not add extra tacticals. Because eliminating it's the difference between the enemy fighter surviving to go away and repair and be back in another turn to be an annoyance, and actually just killing them every time and clearing them away. Since the fighters are reasonably effective against these, and we do have tacticals for the purposes of annihilating the infantry, we should be okay to just simply run more fighter power. Right, I don't know why I'm looking at tacticals here. This is a amusingly cheap fighter because it's amusingly bad. That's why. It's got 3 air attack. That's depressing. No wonder it fares so poorly. Sadly, everything else is even worse. So, because of that, I think overstrengthening is actually going to get us further. Plus, another tactical is going to cost me 3 slots for the Junker. Two slots for the HS123A. So let's go. 15 strength. Or 2 15 strengths or 2 13 strengths. 2 15s and an 11 or 2 13s. Let's go with 2 13s. This way I should be able to hose those fighters out of the sky and then turn the attention of these fighters to the enemy infantry, where they should still be able to get 2 or 3 kills. Now, we also have that hero that gave us double EXP, and I put it on one of my artillery to train it up. My newly minted 122. But it's more important for me to actually put the hurt on the enemy down here. So, since we're going to be doing so much work on the enemy with our aircraft, it almost makes sense to put the guy on one of these and see if we can bump up the power and accuracy fast. To that end, the Junker or one of the fighters would be a good choice. See if we can get their experience up to 1 star as quickly as possible. I think it's a little bit harder for fighters to earn EXP, but they're going to be busy in this mission, so I am going to further assign Fast Learner to this guy. Okay, and we will deploy our fighters here, where they can support the attack on this infantry when they're available, but they're still in a good position to fight the enemy fighters. You may think to yourself, why not deploy them here? But that's just going to result in all those enemy fighters just swarming in and putting the hurt on me. So it doesn't strike me as wise. We need to isolate the enemy air force and delete it one by one. Let's set the junk maker here and my tactical here. Okay, so we've adjusted what we were doing. So what went wrong? For this front, nothing. For this front, we would say acceptably not much. Just a little switch from anti-tank to anti-air because it's more useful to us. But it was not a mistake to deploy the anti-tank. I might have needed that anti-tank. That you have to recognize that in hindsight it was a mistake. But against an unknown enemy, deploying the anti-tank was fine. I didn't know whether I was going to need it or not. Turns out in the end I didn't need it. Oh, of course you could argue that you know, the anti-aircraft gun is actually superior to the anti-tank and can be an anti-tank. But remember, I was just trying to train the EXP up on it while having it on hand. So, you know, identify that that was not the best choice, but it wasn't a mistake to make the choice. And then down here, this went wrong because I didn't think you could deploy units down here. You actually can. And I didn't deploy my aircraft down here because the airfields seemed insecure, but you can actually secure them. So I didn't really analyze the situation fully or properly. Okay, and that's it for now. That's it for my AAR. But I am going to play through under these circumstances so that I can hopefully get all the optional objectives complete this time. So I will see you then.